So I had this idea brewing around in my head for a while of something I wanted to sculpt. Something a little bit different that would challenge me. And recently I've done a lot of sculptures that are kind of like eldritch kind of horrors, sea beasts, stuff like that. And an idea popped into my head of what would happen if we mixed human anatomy with bird. Now, splicing human and bird together can really result in something pretty freaky. And after being addicted to that show Face Off, where they bring special effects people onto a show to build monster suits and masks and stuff like that, I wanted to see if I can take this bird idea and make it into a mask that you would wear. And so this is where that idea started. So I started off with using some monster clay and my head bust. So we're going to use this head bust to sculpt this mask on. Now, I do have to say that I did sculpt this mask, but I decided not to mold it and make it into a real mask. This was more for just practice to see if I could do it and make something that could look like a prosthetic that you could actually put on your face. So in the video, you'll see that I left the eyes blank and a little bit of an open slit where you would actually kind of attach it to your jaw so you could talk. So this is just Monster Clay Gray Medium. It's a fantastic clay that I love to use. I don't specifically like it for making monster masks just because it does harden over time. You got to keep it warm and hot. And using wet clay is a lot better because you can actually sculpt faster with it. But this stuff, it is really good and is also great to reuse it. So my initial idea was honestly to just kind of play around with the clay. Kind of slathering that clay on and building up the forms, the main shapes on the face with the clay. So we got kind of the head there, the brows, putting in the cheekbones, and then we're trying to find where that beak is gonna be. I do have this idea of a beak kind of protruding out from like underneath the skin. So like the beak, he's almost like transformed and the beak is kind of pushing out and causing like all this wrinkles effects. But right now, he's looking more like a Klingon, honestly. You can see in the background that I have a ton of references of other art that I've loved that is really inspiring, and also a lot of insect stuff. And absolutely no bird. No bird reference, which was a mistake to begin with, but I did go back and collect some actual bird reference to do the sculpt. So when you're sculpting, make sure you got your reference, all right? Now, I know you're going to say reference. That's cheating. It's not, all right? All the big professionals who work in the industry, who have a job doing this kind of stuff, right? They all use reference. And it's very important to have your reference because you cannot trust your mind to tell you what this thing is going to look like, because a lot of the time we think we know, but in reality, we really don't. So having that reference is key, pretty much for any artist. So throwing some monster clay on the chin here, trying to build this up. And I'm starting to like how this guy is looking. This is all very rough, very gestural, and we're just blocking out the shapes. Now, I know I wanted this bird to have like this big old mouth underneath the beak, and kind of like almost like a beard. And later on, you will see I added like a nice little beard and some hair on the top there. I gotta say, one of the hardest things to sculpt is hair. I really gave this guy a big old mouth, like a big old sinister grin. Now we're just raking down the surface to smooth it all out. The rake tools that I use for stuff like this is something like this. Now it's a little rusted because I left it in water and I had to clean it, but this is just a pen, blank pen with a razor, a saw blade? Yeah, a saw blade bent into like kind of a rake and just puttied to hold it together and use that to rake. You can also use the other side without the teeth to do some more raking. But you'll find if you start sculpting, you'll start to make your own tools because it's a lot easier just to make your own than trying to find one to buy. But we're just kind of raking down the forms here, trying to figure out some more shapes. Just seeing where this sculpt takes me. I'm also using the rake brush to kind of get in there and not only just rake, but to use it to create small little detail and lay down kind of like a foundation where I'm going to put clay later on, if that makes sense. As you can see here, I started raking in to kind of create this like little groove from the eyebrow going up, which is kind of be like, it's kind of ears almost. And here we're putting on that clay, make that kind of like a, he almost looks like Batman a little bit, but it's more of like a bird ears. Still raking the chin, trying to create a more little details. I didn't like how the chin was looking, so I wanted to kind of bulk it up a little bit more. And then this part, I was thinking more like, what if this bird human hybrid was also kind of mixed with like a lizard, like an iguana. Like iguanas have like these big old dumpling chins, girthy chins. So I wanted just to use those shapes for the chin there. So I start blocking it in with the monster clay. Taking a look at each side, trying to make sure that it looks pretty symmetrical. I didn't like how the chin was looking, so I added more clay here, pretty hot clay. Pulled it out to stretch, and now we're just trying to figure out an interesting shape to make. And then packing more clay in there just to try and make everything symmetrical. Going in there with a nice old rake and smoothing everything down and blending it all in. Now we time jump here. I had some more footage, but somehow it got corrupted, so I wasn't able to show you how I sculpted the beak and all that, but I will go over it. You'll see that we had the original shape of the beak in there, and then added more clay to create that beak shape, and then more clay over that to create that kind of fold, so it looks like the beak kind of grew out from underneath the skin. And here we're going to add some teeth. It's going to be like human teeth, because this is kind of like a hybrid, right? So he's got the beak and he's got the teeth. And I really liked the teeth on this dude mixed with the beak. It looked very sinister and pretty creepy. Teeth can be pretty tough. There's a bunch of different ways to go about sculpting teeth. In this one, I just kind of made little clay teeth and just pluck them or put them on there on the sculpt. And then later we add in kind of little clay noodles on the tops of the teeth to create those gum lines. So we're just placing the teeth, counting each tooth, make sure each side has an equal number of teeth, and then rolling up those little clay tubes and putting them over on the top there and blending them into what will be the gums, which will turn out to be very interesting looking. Let's just say that, okay. Now I'm going into where the gums are, and I'm just trying to make it look a little gross, because gums, they can either be pretty simple or you can just go to town and make them look crazy. And I decided to go the crazy route to make it look fleshy and gross. Now it's important to not get lost in the detail. As you can see here, I am working on one specific area, getting the detail in there. And sometimes when you're doing that, you can forget about the rest of the sculpt, and then you have like one like really polished area, but then everything else looks really rough. And then that can be hard to kind of sculpt everything around that specific spot that you made perfect. A better approach is to work on everything all at once and slowly make everything come together as one. Now we get the blowtorch and we're just pretty much smoothing it out. And when you get really fine detail and you hit it with the blowtorch, it just makes everything look a little bit more subtle. All those sharp edges get rounded out, and it's just a good way to smooth out your sculpt. Now I'm just doing the other side to make sure it looks all symmetrical. Same thing I did on the right side, I'm doing on the left, or vice versa. Just trying to match up that mouth line with the other side. And this can be pretty tricky trying to keep everything symmetrical. If you're having troubles with symmetry, the best thing to do is just keep practicing. You can use a mirror, hold up to the other side to see if it looks symmetrical compared to each side. Tipping it upside down if it's not too big, that's also a good way to see if it's symmetrical. Hell, even keeping it upside down and working on the other side can really help with your symmetry. But if you have a big sculpt that weighs a couple 100 pounds, it's a little bit difficult to do. Now I wanted to add more skin folds to this guy, so I do add a couple more above the beak there, just kind of blending it in to where the other part is, and using our tool to blend those edges in and raking it down as well. Now we got a nice smooth looking wrinkle, or fold I should say, right there. Here we're working on the lips, just applying little dollops of clay onto the lips, which then will later come back and smooth out to blend it all in together. I really do like the method of like just slowly, picking clay and pushing it onto the sculpt to just kind of slowly build it up, especially if you're going into more detail kind of work. Instead of just like globbing clay on and then shifting it all around, I do like the approach to just like slowly placing clay. I feel like it gives you more precision when you're creating something instead of just big globs of clay. But I also like using big globs of clay, so I like to just kind of split it down the middle. So now just adding clay to the other side, trying to blend in those edges, and we come back with a rake to blend it all in to create those big, succulent, juicy lips. God, he's gorgeous. Just wanna kiss him. I wanted more folds. Shocking, I know. I like folds though. That are coming kind of down and around his eyes, almost like he's Batman. Like he's wearing a cowl. But this is where I'm building up where the little cheekbone is going to be. Well, I shouldn't say cheekbone. It was more of an idea of like eye bags. Like the skin kind of just really folded down, and then the eye bags are a little bit lower than they should be, and they're just kind of hanging there. So I'm just plucking clay and just putting on there and slowly building up this side, or I should say both sides, and then smoothing it with the rake tool and just blending it all in to make it look seamless. Going in with another kind of like a hook tool and creating some small little detail. This is where the detail starts. More little pieces of clay, trying to make this skin kind of look more stretched. I'm getting in there with one of my favorite tools made of a guitar string and a paint stick. It's really great for really small detail and intricate work. And you can see the sculpt looks really smooth right now. How I did that, rake it down with the rake tool, and then you go to kind of like a finer rake tool, like the guitar string I was using, right, to smooth that out. And you come back with some lighter fluid, rub it on there, and that helps break down the surface and really smooth things out. Be careful, do not use your blowtorch until that lighter fluid has dissipated, or else, well, you'll catch your sculpt on fire, which has happened more than once. I really wanted this skin to look like it's being pulled. It's like pushed out and being pulled by this beak. I think I did a fine job. Again, I got my reference there of people and insects, and some of those have really great wrinkly lines. It's also important to note that the best kind of reference is real life reference. Getting the blowtorch to smooth out those edges so they're not so harsh, so they look more like they're wrinkles than just tool marks. I really wanted those eye bags to be wrinkled up. I like detail. Make sure you don't over detail your sculpture, because then it can get messy. So I added more wrinkles up near that nose there, nose beak area, because that beak would be pushing up those skin folds, or that skin, that fat. And then I had this idea, because I knew I wasn't going to mold this thing. This was just for practice to see, if I could do something like this. I had this idea that this bird would have feathers. So I decided to sculpt some feathers out of clay and place them around. Because in my mind, if I did make a mold of this and face prosthetic, I would also have something I made out of actual bird feathers that you kind of place over the head. So it looks like, like a bird mixed with a human kind of thing. I'm just looking for placement, not adding them yet. I just wanted to see what they would look like. So I liked how they looked, and I decided to sculpt some more. A lot more. A lot more. I didn't like how the wrinkles looked, so I decided to just rake it all out, or smooth it all out, I should say, and then I come back in there and I try and make it look a little bit better. Now I did a lot more work on this guy with, I gave him a beard, I gave him hair that's sticking up, and the footage that I had, again, was corrupted. So I don't have that part, but I do have the finished sculpt. Let me show you. And here he is in all of his gloriousness. I was still able to get some pictures, so I do have him saved like that. I did a lot more work doing the fur, doing the feathers, and doing a lot of the paw detail on this guy. But there you go, the bird monster. Now I didn't mold this guy. I actually ended up taking the clay off and melting it back down so I could reuse it for another project. This was just something I've wanted to do for a little while now to see if I can do it. And, I was very happy with how he turned out. But yeah, if you enjoy this video, be sure to follow, hit that like button, leave a comment, and let me know what your thoughts are on this sculpt. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.